up.
Yep, and of course, Thunder Predator keeping that flexibility. This very well could be a Dark Mako Mars. This very well could be an off-lane Razor. We really could see a lot of that flexibility in these heroes' positions already, and I think that's where it's up to Infamous to find what they actually want to go for. You even see them banning out the Terrorblade because they're assuming that Lumiere is not going to be on the gyrocopter. I think he very well could be, but that's also where you're suddenly last picking your mid, and then it feels a little bit weird. It does feel like Infamous would want an alone hero. I don't think they really have an alone hero right now. Of course, he's also one of the mid laners we've seen at this tournament play this LC mid if they do want to swap her over because they are assuming it's an Angel Razor, but that's where we really aren't going to know unless we see these heroes slot in because there really is no way to call these lanes because you can move everything up and down. And that's where I think Thunder Predator, it's a lot easier to call that they need either a Dark Mago hero or they need an Oscar hero. Or if they really want to go crazy, they could look for another Angel, but they are also really thinning out that carry pool. So maybe they are looking for something in that 2 or 3 position.
Yeah, that's the other thing to sort of take into consideration here. If this is going to be a play for the carry position at the end for Thunder Predator, you've got last pick, but a lot of those options have been taken away, and now one more being removed in the form of the Ursa. So you are down to some pretty thin options here, and well, their decision might actually end up being dependent on what Infamous do here first, because if they are looking to put the gyrocopter or the LC mid, then they could take another carry for themselves, and then the pool thins out that little bit more. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if Lumiere is just on the gyrocopter, there's nothing wrong with that. He's very much capable on that hero. It's just we've seen that switch up onto Alone so many times that you really don't want to make the call too early. And Infamous, they have plenty of time to think this one over. Neither one of these teams really dipped too heavily into that reserve pool.
Honestly, it's a little bit funky, but I would really like if Infamous went for a hero like the Clinks. We saw it played yesterday, and I think it's one of the best versus Razor just because you do get to this point where if you do have those skeleton burning armies down, you just can't walk into a fight anymore. You are playing a little bit into the arena where maybe they're thinking, okay, this gyrocopter is playing versus Mars. Whenever that arena does go down, your damage is more or less cut in half depending on the placement. So that might be the hesitancy coming in from Infamous. But again, with Bane Darkwill, it feels like they kind of are done. And Sniper, well,
Huh.
it's in that same vein where both of those heroes, they get set up. They are very difficult for you to actually get upon, but there's a Wisp in this game. I feel like it's gonna be very easy for them to actually set up a lot of these relocate kills, and if the sniper is ever too far forward, that's where the Dark Willow is going to be on point. If you ever mess up and you lose track of where this initiation is coming from on the Thunder Predator side, you're just gonna get washed. You're just gonna get murdered more or less. Now, what do they choose on the Thunder Predator side, though? Do they go for a hero like the Storm? Do they switch the draft up and look for one of those jump heroes? Because there is just not a last pick sniper here, so it's not like they're getting blindsided, but that's where Thunder Predator also need to solidify their lineup just a little bit more here. If they really wanted, they'd go for the Spectre, I suppose, but don't think that really feels too fantastic. But Infamous, at the very least, has done a good job of rounding out their lanes even more, and they go for the concise hero pick. That's the hero that's going to breach onto the high ground, and it will be an Angel Razor. Okay, so that's the avenue they
Hmm.
end up going for. Unfortunately, because Infamous don't want Alone on that LC, then Sacred does just have to kind of sit in his lane here, and Alone is actually going to be the one taking the gyro mid. Okay.
All right. So yeah, gyrocopter mid. The LC has to lane against the Razor. My only real concern here for Thunder Predator's lineup with the Leshrac now getting picked up is that means your only ways in onto the backline to get that sniper are going to be Oscar if he grabs a blink, and then the IO relocate, which are obviously both fantastic tools, but one of those two sort of heroes or groups has to be the one making the initiation, unless the Lesh goes for a blink himself, which I suppose is a possibility. We've certainly seen it before, but that's not exactly going to be one of his first major items to pick up. So that means Lumiere might have a slightly easier time trying to stay on the edges of the fight, and if he can do that, he can get his full damage out without being threatened.
Yeah, and in addition to that, it is a very good jump, but it doesn't feel like it's long range enough versus the sniper. And if they do get set up or they do somehow figure out a way to get him out of dodge, then the fight can get really messy. And unfortunately, with the Leshrac hero, once Lumiere does get a little bit of farm, approaching those towers does become very difficult. They do have the IO, so they have a little bit more health and HP to work with, but it's when those high ground pushes actually happen, where if Thunder Predator do stumble on the jump, that I think Infamous could very easily just wipe the board. It's where those counter initiation plays coming in from the LC are going to be absolutely critical. And in a situation like this, if Lumiere does get that game stalled out by his teammates kind of making those nice early game plays, then your game gets substantially easier. It's one of those lineups where if Lumiere can get another 10 to 15 just to farm because his teammates are winning their lanes, then the game gets way harder for Thunder Predator to play that clean game that we see so many Mars Leshracs try to play.
It's all going to be about what they can get for Lumiere here. Obviously, he is not the sole focal point for this lineup because, as you said, you've got a loan on a gyrocopter. That's always going to be a threat as well. But if it comes down to, comes down to exclusively the gyrocopter, because Lumiere is just getting bullied to hell, then it is going to be so much more difficult for Infamous to pull this one off. So Lumiere's protection does have to really be, you know, A, B, and C on the list of priorities for them. So we'll see. Protect Lumiere, potentially win the game, but Thunder Predator are going to be doing everything in their power to try and get after him as we get this first match underway. We'll see if there's any sort of immediate pushes here. Doesn't really look like it. We haven't seen much of that across this event in general. Very few teams now looking for those early fightings, or early fighting, excuse me. If it's a play for a bounty rune, that's really the limits of what we see, although we do have this rotation up onto the ramp, but this really only feels like a play if a lone just wanders directly into them.
Yeah, gotta be a little bit concerned here. You definitely don't want to give your opponents any early advantage. Some defensive plays coming up, but unfortunately, whenever this vision is placed, it really is hard to get caught out in these situations. Uh, you might want to get a little bit more aggressive if you did have someone to pair with the Bane, you know? If maybe the Mars was on that side or a Magnus was picked up, we could see anything more aggressive coming on from the Infamous side, but I think going for the 2-2 split is just going to be exactly what they want. Alone even gets to place his ward from the fog, so he's not feeling too pressured either.
Oh, pretty straightforward opening there. 2-2 split, no early fighting, and yeah, we're just going to settle into that early laning stage. So interesting to actually note, well, I say interesting, slightly, that it's Panda who goes up here with Angel. So we were talking about that IO buffing up the Razor. That is still obviously going to be a play later on down the line, but in terms of the actual laning, Matthew is going to be down here with Oscar instead, which honestly kind of tracks more with the way Thunder Predator play. Of the two, Matthew and Panda, Matthew really is the IO handler.
Yep, definitely. And Pandaboo is just going to do Pandaboo things. Stand in front of his Razor, take a lot of that brunt force to his face, try to save his salve over for Angel if he does end up eating a few kind of those bad trades. But that's where you're playing a Razor lane. You just look for those range creep last hits. You play around the link timing. To get this range of 9, it's going to be pretty nice for them. Very well played from Sacred and Michael. But it's those little things that end up mattering. Unfortunately, in not a similar fashion to the previous games today, we don't have that incredible level 2 power spike where one of these teams is suddenly going to be capable of getting those kills. It's going to be a farm fest.
Right. Top lanes should not see too much action until quite later on, although Michael, he's giving it a go. Throwing the brambles out, gets a little bit of damage onto Panda. Certainly worth the effort. Try and get through the regen, but I think both sides know this really is not going to turn into anything unless someone makes a pretty sizable mistake. But Angel, there it is. You get that static link timing. He pushes his way forward, tries to take control of the lane a little bit, but the whole time they were pushing forward, the creeps are hitting them, Michael's hitting them, so sure, you push Sacred back a little bit, but you took way more damage than you actually dished out, and now Panda, he's got to take a step back. He may end up having to use the salve for himself, but with 3 tangos, yeah, it's going to be a slower regen, but you don't want to have to use that salve on yourself right now.
Man, Sacred's doing a really nice job of finding these denies, actually. Of course, doesn't even have the moment of courage, so it's just raw skill coming in from him, but it's those little things that make this lane a lot more even, especially once he gets those boots. Then he can ignore that Razor matchup just a little bit more, because we'll go over at Angel's side, he's going for the Falcon Blade Rush, so we'll have to see how these builds end up kind of mattering here. Of course, the lane does just get more difficult for you as that Razor does get a few more levels. The static link just gets more and more potent as you go up, and that's where Sacred will probably have to take more and more steps back, especially if Michael ever wants to rotate over to the mid lane or to stack for the gyrocopter.
While over in the middle lane, bit of a foot race there for the water rune. Lone was able to lay claim to it. Dark Mago, though, had already gotten the one further to the south. So pretty much a reset on the lane with both of them having that regen. Alone, though, okay, he's going to take a little bit of extra damage there. And with the Lightning Storm coming in again, I don't really know if that was 100% worthwhile. But hey, he's got a couple of bottle charges to fall back on. Should be all right, but the trade-off very much sort of favors Dark Mago there. And now if he hits this stun, okay, he'll cancel it. But that could have turned into a bit of a rough situation. Alone really is playing with fire here, continuously taking that Lightning Storm damage.
Yeah, and Dark Mago setting himself up. He knows that if he has this wave underneath the Gyrocopter's tower, then he can push in towards that bounty rune if he really needs to. That's all that Dark Mago wants to do here. He wants to shut out Alone, make him go back to base or play around the water runes, in which case Alone might even need a leg up from a support here. But unfortunately, everyone is kind of locked in their own area. If Michael ever walks out, and I think he is going to try to go towards that top rune, it is going to feel like Sacred is kind of left on an island here. And look at how far Angel already has the wave back, so there's no real room for Sacred to actually play in. I can imagine him just walking all the way back to base. Yeah, there's actually nothing he can do for a few minutes here, and those are some pretty critical moments because now Angel is just going to have a free time to pull everything towards his tower.
So Angel takes control of the equilibrium. Alone had to go back to base. Sacred is in the process of going back to base, so a nice sort of upswing for Thunder Predator in terms of some early lane control. It's not going to win out these lanes just yet, especially mid, because Alone has a pretty substantial asset count anyway, but the second he gets back in the lane, you see Dark Mago, he just keeps on pushing his way forward. This is just not enough damage to kill, but enough where Alone is not going to feel comfortable.
No, definitely not. We'll have to see how Dark Mago actually decides to skill up here, because usually he goes for the second point in Edict, and some of the games he just immediately starts to max out that Lightning Storm, and then he's just a force across the map with all that magic damage. But of course, once you hit level 6 on the ledge, the game really does change. You start farming a little bit more heavily, and if anyone tries to contest you on these runes, they eat an incredible amount of damage, something that Alone still needs to be very careful about, even though he hit his own level 6.
Tried to push across the river there. He is going to take a lot of damage dropped low, but you look at the Bane, he's got the wand, he's got a salve, so he should just be able to fall back and heal up. Meanwhile, in the lane itself, Lumiere really is not receiving a lot of pressure. Of course, on the other side of things, you look at Oscar, he's got 20 last hits on the board, so it's not like Lumiere can push him out either, and much like the top lane, this just feels like a scenario where everyone is very much focused on their last hitting, and both teams know there's not going to be a whole lot of opportunities to get those early kills.
No, definitely not. The silence will be broken once Oscar hits level 6, but of course, until then, we are playing the waiting game. It's where, really, to dictate the pace, it's going to be dependent on those power runes, and more so on whether or not Alone wants to venture to these side lanes, because of course, you need a little bit more levels on your supports before you can actually do anything on the Infamous side. But big rotation for the things. Oh, Panda tried for deny there, but he might actually lose his life now.
Yeah. Should be able to bring him down. Alone gets the kill, so it's first blood into the Gyrocopter's hands, and well, a nice early rotation in there. They get Michael over. Meanwhile, the Bane was protecting that south side rune, which obviously didn't spawn, but that was able to keep Dark Mago that little bit more distracted so that there couldn't be a play to the north. So Infamous are able to strike first here, and over on the other side with Angel and Sacred sort of in a 1v1, he tries to go in for the static link, but this really doesn't matter. Sacred can just sort of walk away. Sure, he's got a lot of damage sucked away from him, but Angel's really only going to be able to get 1 or 2 last hits under his tower in the meantime.
Yeah, and that's where, how does Angel decide to use his lead? It's always the next question when we talk about this Razor, because it's not good enough to just sit there and farm. Of course, if you're planning to do that, you probably want a better carry. So we'll have to see how he actually decides to get out onto the map. Oh, going for a dive on Sacred?
Yeah.
I mean,
pushing in with the Eye of the Storm, the static link, the plasma field, it's all going to be enough. He gets the kill, but now I'm going to say he needs to be careful, but this is Michael. He's level 3. He doesn't actually have that much damage, so Angel's going to get away with one once he's able to confirm that there's not a support there for Sacred. Just pushes straight in and gets the kill.
Yeah, very smart D word from Pandaboo as well, saying that Sacred might have reacted a little bit too quickly, but it still wasn't enough. Of course, he does have the phase boots now, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but I am getting a little bit concerned for Infamous. Alone hasn't been able to make really any rotations. He's playing more of that farm-oriented style, and it's that same style where Dark Mago mirroring it, it just feels like he's going to be able to do more with the lead, especially once he has those boots of travel. The setup on these side lanes is really good. It's why they get this Mars every single time it falls into their hands, because they have that guaranteed play. And
Oh,
he's
Dark
getting a little
Mega.
bit crazy on the rune, though.
He is going to get stunned up. Here comes an attempt at support from Panda, and actually that's going to work.
Hey.
They get down the Fire Blast stun. Dark Mago tries to come in. They even get Oscar into the fight as well, throwing down the arena. And that really is just going to put an end to it. Alone in A fall. Dark Mago, though, I mean, maybe the only reason he was there in the first place is because he thought he had those teammates coming, but that is such a risky play to make. It works out for him. I don't know, man. Having that much faith that your teammates are going to back you up must be nice.
Well, and at the same time, you can't really go for those plays on the Infamous side because you have that threat of Matthew just waiting in the wings. They've also done a really good job of stacking for the Lesh. I mean, look at these camps. As soon as he decides to go for it, he's just going to completely accelerate forward towards those crazy timings, and the bottom lane has been vacated. As soon as you hit level 6 on this Mars, it's no longer an area for that sniper to play in. Unless they kill Oscar, he really has no reason to leave. Instead, they're making a movement towards Angel, and Angel is very fragile still at this stage of the game, but that's also where you only have a level 4 Bane. They need the sleep setup into the homing missile, otherwise I don't think they have a kill here onto Angel, but they might be trying to bait him here because Sacred, he's playing like he doesn't have teammates. It might be the perfect bait, actually.
They catch him. A needs to be able to get the Nightmare. They do throw it down. Will there be TPs onto the tower? There is one coming in from Matthew, so they're going to try to defend Angel. The duel, though, does come in, so Matthew's got to try and heal him up, but he doesn't have the tether. It was on cooldown. That's... I don't know if it would have been enough healing anyway, but the fact that he doesn't have it in the first place means Angel is pretty much dead, and Sacred even gets a duel win out of that, and now they're going to push onto the tier 1.
Yeah, it's a really nice and small play from Sacred there, just playing scared, playing like he doesn't want to be linked up, and then they just barely have the range from A. And yeah, mid lane.
Able to catch him out. Arena gets dropped. A lot of patience for Oscar there as well on the spear. Just waits until the last possible second to throw it out, and really maximizes the time that Lumiere had to sit and wait to die.
Yeah, you can never be too careful, and another large aspect of the sniper hero is that during nighttime, you always need to be so careful. Of course, your night vision did get a little bit better, but at the same time, these heroes can collapse on you so quickly, and you get caught off guard in a situation like that. With how many heroes showed top on the Angel kill, Dark Mago gets to claim the bottom tower more or less for free, and that's where suddenly when the game starts to become about this mid lane, do Infamous have the tools to actually defend it and defend their sniper? We'll have to see, because I think Thunder Predator are also very comfortable just sitting around and waiting for Oscar to have not only his blink, but the arena back up, and it looks like that's going to sync up for them as well.
Yeah. They're going to have a play to make here in the near future. Meanwhile, Oscar is very much closing in on that next major item pickup. So everything really is coming up Thunder Predator at the moment, but over on the Infamous side, I mean, this is sort of an issue for them. Who is the playmaker? Who's the one who's going to go in? Sacred does, to a certain extent, sort of fit the bill there, but his Blink Dagger is far off, so he doesn't quite have the means to close the gap. Your Dark Willow could maybe be the one, but Michael would kind of have to just run in there and practically sacrifice himself to make that play. Same situation with the Bane, so you don't really have anyone who can safely initiate, whereas Oscar, he can just march his way forward. Sacred's going to get trapped up inside the arena. The Spear Stun is there to lock him down, and there is absolutely no backup. Sacred will fall. The rest of the attack comes out late, but it's not going to be enough to matter, and Thunder Predator keep that pressure on. Do they continue going for this west side jungle? Because they could try to push Lumiere away, but look at this. We see Infamous, they don't want to give up this farming position.
No, they can't really afford to either. As soon as Lumiere is kind of forced to stop farming, he's gone for the Mask of Madness build as well, so we'll see if he turns around and gets an item like the Maelstrom, but he is really hard working for a lot of these last hits here, and it's those small moments where suddenly you have to place your vision so defensively. You look at the wards placed on Infamous right now, it is just to defend Lumiere from actually being able to make these plays in the jungle, and that's where a very simple smoke from Thunder Predator could just mean his death. At the same time, Infamous, they're trying to make a play with the grip. They want to look for Angel here, but I don't know if they can do this as soon as they see Matthew. They need to sleep the IO, and they're just not long enough range. It's just unfortunate. They don't really have that immediate play, and Sacred's not going for the immediate blink either. We're seeing him go for the Blade Mail first, which is interesting. I think it's a pretty nice pickup versus the Lesh. You can never have too many Blade Mails when going up against that hero, but you're not seeing either side of the benefit of LC with this build. You're not seeing the incredibly farmed Armlet type, and you're also not getting that early initiator out of her either, so it feels a little bit disconnected, but it's just them trying to play around the fact that Thunder Predator are going to be running at them, and maybe you can get some more damage on that Lesh, try to take him out first, but I honestly don't think Dark Mago cares.
Yeah, he's just sort of living his best life right now, farming up, and the LC starting to feel a little bit like some of these dooms that we've seen, right? Where you are sort of stuck in that middle ground where you're not active, but you're also not massively out farming some of your counterparts. So we'll see if there's a change in strategy coming up here. Maybe once he does finish off that Blade Mail, Sacred will get more active, and even without the Blink Dagger, there is the possibility that he can make some initiations happen, but we'll have to see. I believe, yeah, he did finish off the Blade Mail. That's coming out to him right now, and do they go looking for anyone? Do they have a smoke right now? Yes, they do. A is holding on to it, so they could look for the smoke play really with about 3 or 4. It is going to be a 4-man smoke, as Alone just got into range to be included there. So they're going to push forward, but they got to be careful. They got so close to Dark Mago there. Michael very nearly popped, but he is able to maintain that separation, so the move will continue. They're making their way up to the north, where they have Angel and Matthew with, as of right now, no backup, but look at that. The BKB comes out just in time. A could still hit him with the Fiend's Grip, though, so the BKB isn't really going to matter, but it does buy time for the TPs because they don't have the damage to relocate, even coming in to actually pull him away just as that fight breaks out. A gets hit up by the Spear Stun. The Dark Willow, at least, will TP home. But, well, you get a BKB charge out, I suppose, but that is your Fiend's Grip and the loss of your Bane, and not only do you fail to get the kill onto the Razor, but you end up losing one of your own heroes.
And really, you couldn't ask for a better timing for Angel. That was just absolutely perfect. And because they have to split their attention, because that BKB really brought all of the focus over towards the Razor, Matthew gets to split off into the tree line, had the relocate in worst case scenario if it did ever look like the Razor was going to die. But now Dark Mago mid.
Uh-oh. They just... Okay.
Be careful.
They spotted Alone. I thought they might want to go in, but they are going to look for it now. Sacred needs the duel. He does get it onto the Lesh Rack, but the damage is not there yet. Dark Mago's going to survive as Matthew starts healing him up. They do eventually lose him, though, as Michael actually comes in for the double kill, really doing work with the Bedlam, and they actually make it Oscar as well. Spear knockback will not be enough to deter all 5 heroes, and maybe they don't get the duel win, but they certainly take the win in the team fight. And Angel, well, he was in that engagement, but he wasn't as big as they probably needed him to be. Matthew had to shift focus to heal up that Lesh in the duel, so that split focus does kind of cost them their opportunity. They lose 3 heroes, and now the tier 1 tower is under attack, and Angel tries to push forward, but you do need to be so incredibly careful right now, with Infamous still having a really, not quite the whole lineup, but most of it in that middle lane.
Yeah, and that is the worst way for Thunder Predator to get into this mid-tower area. They walked over the choke, and then Infamous kept them there. They were in that range where they can actually be pretty effective, and Angel gonna dive out onto the Dark One. I think Michael, he's taking a while to die here, actually.
They miss with the Spear, and the Terrorize is actually going to force them all back, but forces them back to the tower that they are going to be able to bring down. So getting the Willow kill on top of it would have been pretty spectacular, but at least they get that tier 1. They'll take a little bit more control of the map, or at least attempt to, as they now start making their way up to the north. Alone going to get relocated on. He'll look for the TP, but the Spear is there to cancel it, so the Gyrocopter not going to be able to get himself out. I like the instinct, but it's just a better play from the Mars.
Yeah, Oscar is so quick at making those split-second decisions, and salut. But that's also where I think going forward, we're going to see Thunder Predator really claw back on that bottom side of the map. They already placed a ward down there, so if anyone on Infamous decides to play there, specifically Lumiere, they have a very easy smoke rotation where they probably would get him more or less for free, and that's where Thunder Predator taking the gyro out without having to use the arena, it's the next play, but they came back.
Okay. Duel comes in. Matthew gets taken down. They won't get Angel initially, but Actually, they may not get him at all. Thunder Predator are going to rush reinforcements to the point of attack. They're going to try to track down A, but with the haste rune, look at him go. He is able to outrun most of these heroes. And, okay, he turns for the Fiend's Grip. Here comes the Willow in with that extra damage. A, though, he can't make it happen.
Close.
So close. And now it looks like Michael may end up getting punished for this as well. So, if you're the support duo, you do lose your life, but you saw how close they came to that kill. That's definitely worth the attempt, even with the result going kind of poorly for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, Angel, of course, had a Fairy Fire, had the stick, and they didn't have that Bedlam. There just wasn't enough time for the Dark Will to actually get on top of him, so it's an unfortunate loss, but at the very least, force out another BKB. You didn't end up losing Sacred. He was able to regroup with Lumiere, and you didn't really lose anything to Oscar either, but at the same time, Oscar didn't really be forced into a position where he had to use his arenas, so that's where this refocus onto the bottom side of the map is a problem that Infamous can't really deal with just yet. In Lumiere, does Oscar go? Yeah.
They've got that sniper, they've got him in. The spear actually doesn't connect, but I'm not sure that's going to matter. Lumiere is still stuck in this fight. Angel now pushes forward for the damage, but the duel in onto Oscar, locks him down. They get the duel win. Lumiere still fighting. He will eventually go down, but the cost is a little high here for the Thunder Predator side with Matthew being picked off. Now, I don't know if Angel wants back in without that buff up, but they're at least able to get in onto Michael, so they do take down the Willow. But now they have to decide, do we chase after Alone? They're going to slow him up with the Lightning Storm. The Splitter stun comes in. Press the attack, though, from Sacred. Very well timed to get Alone away.
Yeah, and really, that was a little bit crazy from Thunder Predator. They make that jump knowing they have no obs, they can't get up over to that cliff, they don't have the high ground vision, so the fight looks definitely a little bit more messy, and Angel is the only one who can actually sit in front and not care about any of the Infamous heroes with his BKB, so losing the supports like that and Oscar, it doesn't feel the best, but it's those kills that are going to end up mattering on Lumiere. The more you slow up this sniper, the less effective he is going to be, and up until he gets this Hurricane Pike, he really can't show up to a lot of these fights. I think, again, it's that nighttime timing from Thunder Predator where they can actually catch Lumiere off guard, and in another minute, it's going to be way more difficult to find that same situation just because of that daytime vision.
Meanwhile, for Alone, able to grab himself a BKB, did have to disassemble what was looking like a Dragon Lance there, but hey, BKB obviously going to be quite a bit more important in terms of him staying alive, because Thunder Predator, they don't really have too many ways to deal with the BKB if he pops it, and that is an if, not a when, as Alone got picked off there. Oscar's just faster on the draw, and now that BKB is not going to be nearly as useful as Dark Mago, has the Nightmare removed, but walks into the Bramble. So they're not going to be able to chase for more, but that is probably the biggest kill you had available to you in that scenario. Quick pick onto Gyrocopter, and where do they go now? That is going to be the question. Roshan is up, but this lineup is kind of meh in terms of Roche taking ability, certainly with Infamous having 4 heroes up, so looks like instead it's just going to be kind of a retreat into their own jungle to continue farming.
Yeah, and that is the big drawback of Thunder Predator. They don't have an entrance onto the pit. That's pretty much we're pretty solely going to be Infamous who actually have that opportunity to make their way over toward that side of the map. Unfortunately, you probably would have wanted Sacred to be that secondary DPS because Alone has gone for this Gyrocopter build that he pretty consistently has gone for when he has been on the gyro, where he goes for the Treads Dragon Lance and then disassembles for the early BKB. But it just means you don't have that very strong Ags timing. You're really playing more around your spells than your actual right-click damage. And of course, gyro is never going to have bad right-click damage. You just don't have that same situation where you get the Daedalus, you get the Satanic, and then you stand on top of all of these heroes. But that's where you look at Angel, who has his refresher. They're going to look for a fight very, very soon. They are really looking to get active on the Thunder Predator side. And that's where, again, they haven't been able to address this wet track continuously playing and finding his farm in the bottom lane. And Dark Mago is just massive. He's looking at his BKB. Once he has that, he's going to be just as confident as Angel to stand in these forward fights. And that's where you're really wondering if Lumiere is going to be able to keep pace with the enemy cores.
Yeah, it's just a matter right now of Thunder Predator really gearing up for exactly what their lineup is good at, which is taking that sort of prolonged fight, right? If the Leshrac and the Razor are able to just sort of get long duration static links, maxed out Pulse Nova on you for 10, 15, 20 seconds, you can't win that. And then Oscar, normally a hero on the Mars that we look at as get in, get a kill, get out, can play a bit more of a role because that arena, even if you don't get the kill immediately, it keeps you in that area for an extended period of time. So if you get the early kill, find that first pick off, great. If you don't, you're still stuck in the engagement. As right on cue, Oscar jumps in. They're going to look for the Dark Willow, but not able to take her down initially. But now here comes the relocate in. They want to get onto Lumiere. Lumiere, with that Hurricane Pike, will be able to create a little bit of separation, but Oscar blinks forward, trying to stay in front, getting the knockback with the Rebuke, and Lumiere is going to be taken down. Michael falls as well, and Alone is going to try and fight his way out of this, but look at that. The second half of the relocate pulls him away, and Alone doesn't complete the TP. He's dead, and Sacred, okay, he gets the duel win, but they need more. A trying to get in there for the Fiend's Grip, but Matthew just pushes his way forward, going to be able to kill off that Vayne, and now Sacred's alone with no duel, no press the attack for a few seconds. They get him with the Splitter, and Thunder Predator will clean up that fight. Oscar is sacrificed, but yeah, 5 kills going the other way. More than worth it for Thunder Predator as they are starting to exert more and more control. And this is what we were sort of talking about, right? You have to protect Lumiere, because if you don't, Alone is very strong, but he is not 1v5 strong on this gyrocopter.
Yeah, and they just caught a glimpse of him. They originally didn't even see him as the target. Of course, the arena went down so early onto that Dark Willow, but without that fear, these heroes just immediately get on top of you. The relocate was also perfect from Matthew, getting Angel to pressure Lumiere just like that. And then, unfortunately, at this stage of the game, Alone cannot stand next to anyone, especially not Angel with 2 Eyes of the Storm going. And unfortunately, that just means you can't have a gyrocopter in this fight. And it's like you said, if Thunder Predator can take these minute-long fights, they are going to take them incredibly easily, where it feels like Infamous's window is in the beginning fight at that duel, and then with whatever you can find on A, because A, he didn't even get the grip. It got canceled so quickly. He is trying to find nightmares on some of these targets, but it still feels like there are way too many threats and way too many powerful heroes running at you. This is even before a lot of these big items are finished up. That was before BKB on Dark Mago or the BKB on Oscar, and once they have those, then there really is nothing for them to be afraid of, because right-click wise, everyone on Infamous isn't that strong just yet. We're still waiting for that next item from both Lumiere and Alone that's going to help them in that regard, because right now it feels like magic damage is all they've got.
And you see Alone, in terms of the itemization, he is now trying to rebuild the Dragon Lance that he disassembled for the BKB. So that's not a right-click item, really. That doesn't do much for him. So Alone can't punch through right now. The Sniper is still in a position where he's not going to be able to just take someone out inside of that BKB timing. So Thunder Predator, with BKBs up now on Dark Mago and Oscar, as you were alluding to, not invincible by any means, but Oscar feels confident enough to make plays like this one, just jumping in, but that Terrorize is going to be here this time, but it doesn't really matter. Dark Mago had the BKB, and Oscar was hit up by the Nightmare, so he didn't really get affected by it either. And those are your 2 supports dead. One of them has buyback in the form of the Willow, but with these short death timers, I think they'll just wait it out, but while they wait, they're going to be losing that tier 2 tower mid.
Yep, and they don't really have any other plays. Of course, Sacred did find time to split off into that top side of the map, and immediately Dark Mago with the Boots of Travel just kicks him out. And Dark Mago can make this TP knowing that without the supports, there is no active play. It's not like Alone and Sacred are going to sync up and then randomly kill Dark Mago for free. It just isn't in the playbook for Infamous right now, and that's where, again, those few little plays that didn't work out early on are definitely making their lineup way more difficult to execute. And now Thunder Predator are just taking the entirety of the map. Angel also finished up a Lincoln Sphere, so it's not like you have that defensive tool of just dueling the Razor to get him away from one of your cores. He's got a free pass. Not to mention that once he refreshes, he's got 2 free passes.
Right. 2 basically free blocks, and if you're looking at Infamous, that's the duel, that's the Fiend's Grip, or the Nightmare. If 2 of those abilities get taken away, you might as well just not target Angel right now. Also, one other thing I will point out later as we're getting into the fight, Alone is going to get jumped in on. Fiend's Grip does go down onto the Lesh. So Alone's going to try to back away. He's looking for the TP home, and they will manage to get him out. So they do at least get 1 away, but now A is basically going to be left behind and sacrificed. But hey, you sacrifice the Bane to get your core out of there as Alone will live. But the point I was going to make, and actually very well timed too, because Panda just does it, I think Angel has been not bloodlusted for about 30 seconds in this game in total. He is just constantly oh boy, throwing out that buff up onto his Razor as Oscar comes about a pixel away from hitting that spear, but Lumiere is able to blink out in time.
Yeah, unfortunately, Oscar did blink onto that little cliff there. It's not the ultimate high ground, but it's that weird middle ground, so he didn't actually find the connection there. And actually, Matthew relocated him to try and save him, so maybe the punish?
They get the duel down. Alone, though, he's still taking so much damage. They do get Matthew, however, but he'll immediately buy back, recognizing this is a fight that we can win. Angel comes in. A, meanwhile, doesn't have the Fiend's Grip, so he only has the Nightmare to deploy, and that is not going to be enough. A will be run down. Angel picks up both kills.
Try harder.
And now I think, yeah, they're just going to go back into the Roche pit. They have eliminated that initial resistance, and Roshan should be pretty easy to take here. The Willow, well, if you have the Terrorize up, maybe you could make some sort of miracle play and sneak in, but not going to happen without it.
No, and yet again, we're seeing every single time that Thunder Predator notice that Infamous are making this rotation over towards the pit. That's the second time they immediately drop pit, say, okay, we'll kill you instead. Sure, give us the opportunity, and then they immediately take it. And unfortunately, Infamous, they can't win the fight, but they also can't give up the Roche for free because their alternative is to farm out these side lanes. And sure, you've got items like the BKB on the LC, and anything for Alone, because he really has fallen by the wayside in terms of farm, because you're trying to give everything over to Lumiere. Lumiere, by the way, who feels like he needs this Blink Dagger to actually defend himself in these fights. He's so terrified of the reach that Thunder Predator have, a reach that honestly we weren't too sure about because it is really just coming in from Oscar, but he has so consistently been able to find this sniper on the outskirts of these fights that you can't really afford to not have a blink in this game. Unfortunately, Angel is going to be right there on top of you because he's got a Blink Dagger of his own, and until we see something like a BKB or a Daedalus from Lumiere, there's no real good way for Infamous to keep these heroes off the sniper. It's all about positioning, and unfortunately for Infamous, Thunder Predator have Edict. They don't even need to commit too hard to actually get on top of these objectives.
Yep. Dark Mago can lead this charge all by himself. Everyone else is just going to sit back and set up in case there is a move made. But even if you kill off Dark Mago here, it's the Aegis. He's going to be coming back, and now... Okay, Sacred will go for the duel. The arena, though, is going to be jumped on, and Michael gets blown up immediately. Sacred did not get the kill that he wanted. And now Sacred's actually just kind of stuck in no man's land here. He does not have backup. He's going to try to get back to the fountain, but he's just going to get right-clicked down, buying back immediately, though, hoping to rejoin the fight. A gets taken down as well, but there's no buyback on the Bane. Thunder Predator will march their way forward. Dark Mago hit by the Assassinate. Still not enough damage to bring him down, though. And now Sacred, you're back in the fight. Great, but there's no duel for 20. Which means, really, you don't have any way to initiate in here. Alone, ooh. Very nearly hit up by the spear, but Oscar doesn't actually decide to go for it. But the Split Earth connects onto 2. Sacred had to use the press the attack on himself, but that means Alone is left with no protection, and he will fall. This is just turning into a terrible play for Infamous, and I think at this stage you're better off not trying to resist. Stop losing heroes and just let the racks go. They will do it eventually, but not before 1 or 2 extra heroes got taken down.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate. Angel played that so well. Of course, he does have that buffer, but he caught the Bane off guard. Abe didn't know about his Lincoln status. As soon as that refresher popped, he didn't know that he couldn't grip, because Angel was about to be gripped right outside of the fountain.
Oh, this
and
is
then
full-on
most likely killed.
desperation, though. They're going in for it. They get the duel down. They have to win this fight, otherwise the game could very well end here. But Angel gonna get relocated out. Matthew is... Oh, he's just a god. Pulls his teammate out of the fire. Meanwhile, Oscar keeping the opposing heroes in place. They weren't able to fall back in time, so now Angel, he's healed up. He's back in. He's got a BKB, for God's sake, so he's just going to pop it. They're looking for Lumiere. They cancel his TP. And, yep,
Yeah,
that's it. If they don't win that fight, that's the game. They don't win it, and they call it.
And maybe you could try and defend a little bit more, but I think they kind of realize that this Lesh is about to be 25, you're about to have that double Edict, and then suddenly this Lesh is just going to take your entire base, and they don't really want to play versus Megas without a BKB on Lumiere, but at the same time, that was just a really nice draft and a nice game from Thunder Predator. They do that concise style where again, everything kind of just works for them, where Oscar gets level 6, he makes rotations, he gets out on the map. Dark Mago only has 1 death in his game, plays a relatively flawless style of Leshrac where he just got all the split farm. There was never an opportunity, and I think a few presented themselves, but Infamous just didn't have the kind of lineup where they chase Dark Mago over towards that bottom lane, they kill him while he's going for the split push, and then you kill Dark Mago. You take the pressure off of your map, and I think it's where they couldn't find enough of those plays to give that space over to Lumiere, and then Lumiere wasn't able to defend the base because they didn't have enough space to work with. At the same time, I think this was a real cold game from Alone. Alone just didn't have anyone to play with. We saw them try to set up with the Bane, I think 2 times where they go for that smoke. One of them does actually work out, but if that doesn't happen really enough times in the early game, they just didn't get off to a good enough start. I think Sacred also, with his build-up, got his Blink Dagger at 20 minutes into the game. It feels like they were already running out of damage, and I think that was really the big problem for Infamous. They simply didn't have enough damage coming from their heroes to actually kill anyone on Thunder Predator, and then to accentuate that fact, they've got a Wisp as well, so it's not like those kills are going to be easy in the first place.
Right, you were already in a rough situation. It's made even more difficult by the lack of damage, and obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, we can say this, but maybe it would have just been better. Put Lumiere on the gyrocopter, run it in the 1, get yourself a more active mid laner for Alone, because as it turns out, once they started falling behind, there wasn't enough space on the map. You pointed it out during the game itself that Alone's farm had basically been sacrificed because anything that they could safely secure for themselves had to go to the sniper. So it feels like in another scenario, if they don't just get sort of immediately put on the back foot like that, then this strat could work. But with that farm being taken away so early and so quickly, the gyrocopter really just was a non-factor.
Yeah, we might see Infamous go for something a little bit less all-in-y, I would say, when it comes to, again, how their lanes ended up turning out, because this is the second time in very decisive fashion in that first game of D2 Hustlers where they lose one lane so hard that it is felt across the entire map. I also think just a really nice pick for Dark Mago. This Lesh honestly slotted in and fixed a lot of their problems and just made the game feel so much easier for them to play.
Yeah. And Dark Mago, already a player who can make the most of a bad situation, then you give him a hero that actually has an advantage and see the results. Thunder Predator take the win here in game 1. They now are in sole possession of first place, pulling out to their 11th win. They would very much like to make it 12 and solidify that spot at the top even further. So off the back of this first victory, they're hoping the momentum carries over. Meanwhile, for Infamous, going to need to make some adjustments in terms of execution and in terms of their draft. So we'll see what those adjustments are and if they are going to be enough to make the difference, as we will be heading into game 2 in just a couple of minutes.